Uh, so, good afternoon, one and all. On behalf of Innoville Club of Pondicherry, myself, the club president, invite you all to this essential and very enlightening session on the important topic of role of parents in preventing suicidal tendencies in young adults. As you know, it's a very, very important topic nowadays. The situation, there are a lot of cases which are presenting the case, number of such things are increasing. So I thought it's a very significant topic to discuss. So as a speaker today we have Dr. Pulkit Sharma, a very well-known clinical psychologist, author, and columnist. He integrates the richness of ancient spiritual perspective and contemporary psychology, helping people reclaim their life. In past 15 years, he has written several articles, columns, research papers for prominent national and international journals. He received an award from Indian Council of Philosophical Research for his writing. He played a major role in developing India's first app-based mobile counseling service in 2016, and he developed modules for common psychological disorders. He has worked as a clinical psychologist and a teaching faculty in women's. And apart from psychology, he is keenly interested in spirituality, and he has been working towards integrating psychology and spirituality. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome such a talented friend of mine on this platform, Dr. Pulkit Sharma. The platform is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I think, as you're saying, so today is the World Suicide Prevention Day, a very important day, I think, which has been marked, because what we have been seeing is that in the last, 1 decade or so, the number of people who die by suicide, that number is increasing. And the more worrisome thing is that most of these suicides globally across countries, a large number of suicides happen in the age group of 15 to 29, the young adult age group. So it's a very, very worrisome trend. And I think that we as, each one of us should do a bit to prevent it. So first, let's try and understand that, that why does someone, commit suicide, Because if you see, now, since we have this pandemic, so you would have seen that how scared some people are for their lives. Everybody wants to live, so there are people who are taking a lot of precautions. There are people who are reeling under anxiety and worry. And so within this context, it may seem very surprising to those who, to some of us, that, that why does it so happen that someone wants to take their own life? Why does the will to live die out? Why does the person wish to harm himself or herself? So these are very, very, very significant questions. So though, though the things would really depend on person to person, why does someone want to commit suicide? But there is you can say there's a cluster of reasons that we see across people. So one which you would have seen, like you would have read newspaper reports so many times, whenever the results of board exam comes, there are reports in the newspaper that, that some children, who did not score up to their expectations, some children who scored a little less marks or somebody who failed, they quickly commit suicide, whenever the board exam results are out. So, meaning that why does that happen? And that's the most prominent number one reason, that there is shame or pain or sadness from a real or an imagined loss. Whenever someone feels that they've had a big loss has come their way, they feel very ashamed, very hopeless. They feel they won't be able to face the world. They feel that that the world is going to make fun of them, and that's becomes this reason that there's an intense shame and guilt, and the person thinks that no, I cannot face it, and so I will end my life. So pain and shame from loss, that's like the most prominent reason why people would commit suicide. The second reason is that more often than not, suicide, the person who commits suicide, it's not the wish to end life. In many cases, it's just a cry for help. So the person feels that they must do something extreme to tell people, that they're really hurt, so that people finally take care of them. Somebody finally listens to them. Somebody finally soothes them. So the intention may not be to take the lives, and that's why you would see that some people yeah, so that some people I would request people in the audience to mute themselves, because I think
And मनोरमा आंटी प्लीज आप म्यूट कर लीजिए. You just mute yourself, no? Yeah.
Thank you, Manoma. Yeah.
The admin can mute everyone and unmute the speaker.
Yeah.
Admin should.
So whenever we have any questions, you all can unmute yourself. That's not a problem at all. Yeah. So many times it's that cry for help. That I need to be heard. I need to be understood, and that's why the person takes this step. Then it can also be a very impulsive decision, like it happens that someone, there's a breakup in someone's life. The person loves somebody, and that person says, I can't be with you. And there's that intense rage, and the person does something very self-destructive in the moment of that rage. So suicide can be also third because of impulsive decisions. It's not something very well thought of, that someone has been thinking for 2-3 months that I'll commit suicide on this date. It can be very impulsive, that I'm so hurt, I'm so angry, I'm so much mad in rage that I just do it. Then another thing is taking drugs, alcohol, any kind of psychoactive substance. It has also been found people who commit suicide in a very large number, and this happens because whenever you are taking drug or alcohol, your thinking, your reasoning, your decision-making capacity, that somehow gets clouded. And so if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling low, under the influence of those drugs, you might kind of take an extreme step. And lastly, we have these psychological disorders like depression, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, where the person feels very hopeless in general, and that can also lead to suicide. So one thing which we were told when we were training to be psychologists, because at that time we would be really worried, because you would have seen that that this wish to die, it's very common, that even you and me would have felt at some point in life that, oh, I feel so sad and my life is not worth living. This wish is fairly common, so we were very worried, and we used to ask our teachers that this wish is so common, so does it mean that anybody and everybody who has this wish would commit suicide? And so the teacher said that, well, I mean, you can't take a chance, but the most important predictor that whether someone will commit suicide or not is hopelessness. That whether the person is hopeless or not. So if someone says that I may commit suicide or I want to commit suicide, it's very important to figure out, to ask them, that you really feel that your life circumstances, your life situations will not change ever, or will they change? And if the person says that, yeah, I feel there is some glimmer of hope, something may change, then you can have some faith that, that given the necessary help, the person will sail through this. But if the person says that, I am convinced that, there's no hope and there will be no hope ever, then in that case, it will be, it is very, very crucial, you know, it,
No audio is there. No audio is
Mr. Sharma, your mic is muted. You have to unmute your mic. It is still muted. No audio. No audio, please.
Hello,
Yeah, it's there now.
it's
Yes.
there now. Okay, I am
Yeah.
extremely sorry. I think there was some problem somewhere in some connection. Yeah. So yeah.
Can you repeat last 1 minute or so?
Yeah. So what I was saying is that hopelessness is the biggest predictor, of that, that whether someone will commit suicide or not. So hopelessness is the biggest predictor. And when someone says that they are hopeless, that's a really warning sign that we must keep in mind. The second important question is, that people would often ask, and they say that, that depression is ages old, sadness is ages old. It has existed since the beginning of human race, like people were sad, people were unhappy. So why is it that the number of suicides are increasing nowadays? Why so now? Why not it has been like this forever, uh, and that's true. If suicide was just a disorder in your brain chemistry, then it should have been the same across ages, periods, decades, but it has not been. There's a very, very clear research that says that in the last 2 decades, the numbers have been consistently rising. And the main reason, which you all, I think, would be able to very easily guess is this thing that the increased isolation in our lives and the lack of meaningful relationships. Like since the last 2 decades, there has been, our lives have become so much busier. There's so much of technology. We are self-absorbed with our phones, with our screens. We are completely immersed in our jobs with no time, for ourselves, for our family, for our friends. And that's the reason, that though we may have like 1,200 or 1,500 friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we rarely have people, with whom we can with whom we can spend 1 or 2 hours in the evening, talk at length, with whom we can confide, in, without the fear of being judged. So even if we have very close friends, we are so conscious of our image. We'll say that, oh my God, if I'm going to tell somebody that I'm, faltering here, or I'm, or there's something wrong, how will the world judge me? So all these issues, they've led to this increased isolation and lack of meaningful connections. And that's why people are all alone with their misery, with their sadness, and the number of suicides is skyrocketing, you know. So that's one main thing that we need to do as a society, you know, that we somewhere need to find ways to change it. You know, we somewhere need to bring back those old meaningful social interactions. Right. So since the talk today is about, you know, more about how can we as elders, as parents, help people, help these young adults cope with it. So what we can do. So there are two clear strategies, you know, what we can do to prevent suicide in the first place, so that, you know, someone does not feel suicidal. And the second would be that if someone is feeling suicidal, what we can do then, you know. So both the things are a little different. So let's start with, you know, that how can we create such an atmosphere in our homes, you know, at our schools, you know, in our families, that youngsters feel less driven towards suicide. So the first important thing, you know, and you would have read this very amazing anecdote, you know, about the life of Mahatma Gandhi. You know, once, there was this woman who brought her small child to Mahatma Gandhi and said that, you know, Bapu, he eats a lot of jaggery, and I'm really worried that his teeth would get really destroyed, you know. So please tell him that he, you know, please counsel him, convince him that this is something really wrong and he should not be doing it. And Gandhiji simply told her, all right, my child, you come after 3 weeks, I'll talk to him, you know, I'll talk to your child. The woman was a little taken aback. She said, I came here and I stood, you know, for such a long while in hot sun, you know, for hours waiting to see this man, and he's telling me to come to see him after 3 weeks. But she really respected him, admired him. She said, all right, maybe I'll do that. So she brought the child after 3 weeks, and then Bapu told the child that, look, you know, jaggery in small amounts is good, but if you take a lot of it, it's bad for your teeth, and so on and so forth. And he said that woman was a little annoyed, and she asked him, she said, oh, Bapu, if you had to say this thing, why didn't you say 3 weeks back? Why did you made me wait 3 weeks, come back again, you know, and endure this whole thing? He said, look, my child, you know, till 3 weeks back, I myself used to eat jaggery in good amounts. You know, I had to make sure that I, you know, walk my talk, you know. So that's very important for each one of us, you know. So meaning that if, and how that is, how that applies to suicide. Yeah, please, you want to ask something?
Sir, you have to increase your volume. I am getting request to increase a little bit of your mic volume.
Okay. So let me see. Just a minute. Okay. Wait a second.
Yeah,
Let me see. I'll just hold it closer to me.
Closer.
Is this fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
better.
Okay. So I'll just hold it like this. Okay. So how this applies to suicide prevention is that we should be a role model in front of these youngsters in talking about negative emotions, in talking about our failures, our sadness, our pain. You know, because when they see that, yes, you know, we are so comfortable in talking and sharing about our low phases, about our, you know, feelings of shame, of guilt, of sadness, they will also get this power that, okay, all this is normal. And if my dad, if my mom, if my brother, if my grandmother, if my grandfather, they can talk about this, I can also talk about this. If they can deal with it, I can also deal with it, you know. So the first important point is, let's be a very, very good role model for these children. We usually don't be this good role model, and we simply say, be strong, you know, push away negativity, no sadness, no guilt. What happens is we create an immense pressure on these youngsters that there's something wrong with pain, there's something wrong with sadness, there's something wrong with guilt, there's something wrong with the breakup, I should not be talking about it. And these feelings simmer beneath, and then they explode in the form of depression or suicide. So the first step is, let's be good role models. Let's talk about happiness and sadness with equal comfort in our families. That will really prevent a lot of suicides. Second, most important thing, very typical to Indian mentality, that whenever someone has a problem, we become this Guruji, Babaji, and we start giving a lot of gyan. We start preaching. So someone says, I'm very sad. No, don't be sad. You think positively. You go out, you play sports. These are the very common things we say. That's all good. There's no problem with that. There's no problem with suggesting activities. There's no problem with telling someone to think positively. But first, you need to listen to what they are feeling. You need to let them cry. You need to let them unburden their hearts. So that's very, very important. So you should listen to them very carefully and understand them from their perspective. Not like this, that someone says that I had a fight with someone, abused me, and I feel like killing myself. We should not say, oh, don't be a kid. We should say something like this. No, I understand. You are very, very hurt and you are feeling very sad and very angry, but your life is too precious. That's the way to do it. So you listen to them carefully, acknowledge their feelings, and then you can teach and preach and motivate and empower. But there's no shortcut to listening and understanding. So always listen. In many scenarios, what happens is that just because someone is able to just because say what they have to say, someone is able to confide in you, only that will make them feel very positive. So don't snatch away this joy from them, and it's a very simple thing that each one of can very easily do. Third important thing, that create a good deal of family time. And by that, I mean both quality time and quantity time. So these days we idealize, the notion of quality time, that we are giving quality time, we are giving quality time to our kids and that. But if you really see, yes, quality time is there, but there's very less quantity of that quality time. Usually what most of us, and including me, are doing, I'm not saying that I'm talking from a pedestal, that we are working very hard for money, for securing the future of our children, for building houses, for buying cars, for giving them, for sending them to for education to UK, USA, and and in the meantime, because we are so busy, we are outsourcing parents. We are outsourcing the task of parenting. So we have these caretakers, tuition teachers, dance teachers, this teacher, life coaches, psychologists. That any problem the child has, we find a person. All right, you take care of the child now, because I'm too busy. So we really have to find quantity time also. I'm really not saying that we should, sacrifice our careers or give up something, but we need to be really careful about this, that ultimately we are the parent of the child, so there is a certain responsibility that comes with that. And we can't simply hire people to fulfill that responsibility. That responsibility is our own responsibility. So that's why we need to really balance this quantity and quality time. There's no, doing that. And the fourth thing is that we also need to balance between being and doing in the lives of children. Nowadays you would have seen, and I also have a daughter who's 6.5 years old, and I see that, my God, like their life is super busy even now. I mean, I have very clear memories when I was 6 years old, and I don't remember that my life was ever so super busy, you know. But nowadays, like, you know, every parent wants their child to be a marvelous singer by the age of 8, to be a marvelous dancer, to be a marvelous judo karate person, to be a marvelous sports person. Their school is already like so much filled with academics. Even then they want them to be good at abacus, at olympiads, so many things, you know. It's good, I would again say there's nothing wrong with it, but you know, there's a balance between being and doing. You know, means that if you keep on doing things, there will be this kind of weariness and fatigue inside you, and you will not be able to take care of yourself emotionally. And if you be for a while, you know, just say kabhi ye hota hai na, that you know, that it's like a complete off day and you do nothing. You know, you maybe just go out, you just walk for 3-4 hours, you just, you know, sit, you just read a book, you know, not because you need to, you know, enhance your vocabulary or you need to find some meaning out of the book, but you just read, you know, you just read for the joy of reading, you know. You just paint for the joy of painting, not because you have to make a very good painting or you have to put it on Facebook, you know. So these moments of being, they have become very, very less in our lives, you know. It's all about performance, it's all about, you know, putting on Facebook, putting on Instagram, telling people, becoming, you know, becoming a champion, you know. And we all want you know, children to be champions, you know. We all, you know, this whole thing we have taken that I'm sure you know, the if you know, there was this song by, in the, I think the first movie of Amir Khan, पापा कहते हैं बड़ा नाम करेगा, बेटा हमारा ऐसा काम करेगा. I think we have just idealized that song. Each and every parent has that dream, you know, बेटा मेरा बहुत बड़ा काम करेगा, you know. So, you know, why can't we be happy with a normal child, you know, a normal, healthy child, a normal, healthy, average child? What's wrong in that? You know, why? You know, no, but we really want, you know, something like a Superman, Superwoman, Supergirl, Superboy. So this is really putting immense pressure, fear of failure, self-image issues on our children, you know. So I'm not saying that let them be, don't motivate them, no, but you know, tell them, all right, you know, these are the things, you know, you try your best to do it, and hua theek hai, nahi hua theek hai, that's okay. Just put your effort, and after that, just have fun. That's very important. So these 4 things, you know, that let us be a role model in talking about emotions. Let us listen carefully and understand them from their perspectives. Let us create good quantity, good quality times in our families, and let us balance between being and doing. If we are doing these 4 basic things, you know, then it will create such an environment where, you know, these demons like depression, sadness, they will not be there. And, you know, we will never reach the stage of suicide. But if we are too late, if despite doing all this, you know, because home is a part of child's life, it's not the whole of child's life, you know. They can get very depressed at school, they can get very depressed somewhere else, you know. They can fall in love and then they can have a broken heart, and then, you know, that could lead to some, you know, mess. So what do we do then? So then, most important is we learn to look at the signs and symptoms of alarm, you know, signs and symptoms that someone could be suicidal. And because see, very rarely someone would come and tell you that, oh, you know, look, I'm planning to commit suicide, you know. Nobody does, right? uh, n- uh, so what are the signs and symptoms? As I said like a while ago in the talk, the first sign is hopelessness and helplessness, you know. So if someone says now that I don't think things will ever change, I think it's going to be like this, I don't see a ray of hope, that's most important sign that there's something wrong. Secondly, isolation and withdrawal, keeping oneself locked in room, not talking to friends, not meeting, you know, people, not feeling joy in the things that the person normally finds joyful. These are also worrying symptoms. Third, reading about death, dying, ways to commit suicide, it's very common. Nowadays, many youngsters, if they have to commit suicide, they ask Google, what are the best ways to commit suicide, and there are some very, very bizarre video games also that will take you step by step, games and challenges to how you can commit suicide. So all these are also very, very alarming things. Fourth thing, self-destructive behavior. That if you see someone is not taking care of their health, someone is, drinking like anything, someone is smoking like anything, all these, and someone says, jo hoga dekha jayega, or I don't care, whatever happens to my life. That also is a worrying sign. Fifth, substance abuse, any kind of drugs, addictions, because as I said, under the spell of drugs and addictions, the person loses their rational judgment, and suicide happens very in a moment of impulse. And the last thing is mood swings, being very irritable, crying, being very labile. One moment the person is like something, the next moment they are in a very different mood. These are like very, very worrying signs. And if we see these signs, then we should take a next step. And what's the next step? Like, how do we approach such a person? So one thing is very clear, that we should just approach them in a very, very clear manner, and invite them. Just a second. I think there is some other voice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So we should invite the youngster for a one-to-one conversation. We should simply say that, look, I'm really concerned about you, and I want to talk about something really important. So be very clear, be very directive, be very warm, and show a lot of concern. Now, the important thing is that how you open your communication is very important. So if you say that I'm really worried, what is happening to you? Oh my God, or you are going down the hill. The person might not like it. The person might take it as a criticism and become very defensive and say, I don't want to talk to you. Everything is fine. You don't worry about me, So how we open the communication is very important. So generally, as a rule, open this conversation with a very positive statement, with a very positive statement, and say that, say something very genuinely nice about them, say that, you are a very well-behaved child, or you have been, or you have been you have been a very high achiever, or you have never given me any kind of trouble, or you are so dear to me. So start on any positive note, which highlights something good about them, and then say, but for the last few days I've been seeing something, and that makes me worried. And then you just point out the behaviors in a very non-critical manner, so don't add your judgment to it, but you can simply say that, like, I see that, that you are most of the times in your room, and although there's nothing wrong in being in your room most of the times, but what makes me worried is that you don't talk much, and what makes me worried is that you used to laugh, you used to crack jokes, but now you are very somber, you just keep to yourself. So these are very important, things that you start by highlighting these behaviors. Yeah. And then, you ask them directly, that whether they are feeling hopeless, helpless, how are they feeling? You ask them, and if they say that yes, they're feeling hopeless and helpless, you validate their pain, you validate their sadness, and you say that yes, it's perfectly human, perfectly normal to feel sad, to feel hopeless at certain points in your life. There's no harm in that. There's no problem in that. And after that, but you tell them that, look, your life is too important, and it's not just important for me, it's much more important for you. And that's a very good point, because we should never tell a person who wants to commit suicide that you need to live for me. We need to actually tell them that you need to live for yourself. We need to tell them you have such a long life, you can do so many wonderful things, you can gain so many more experiences, so that your life is very important. And so why don't you seek some help? So then you can encourage them to seek help. And again, if you feel that someone is very depressed and very suicidal, I would say that you don't need to hover around them, but you don't leave them unattended. You always you know be with them. You make sure that you don't leave them unattended. You make sure that you don't have any dangerous medications inside your house, like sleeping pills or something like that, which can be taken. And you keep a close watch on the person's behavior, so that if there's any problem, you can forestall it. So these are the basic things that you can do to that if someone is actually in that state. Because if someone is in a really very depressed and very suicidal state, then it's very important that you make them seek help. You encourage them to seek help from someone, and you encourage them to spend more and more time with you, so that slowly and steadily they start feeling better. So these are some very simple things that can be done. And I think if we keep our eyes, ears, and our hearts open, then we can surely save many lives, and we can make a lot of difference to people at our home and those around us. So, and I'll just share this one very important thing with you. And I was studying psychology at that point of time, long back. And one of my friends who was not studying psychology, she one day just called me up and asked me that I just want to read a psychology book. And I just told her, I said, okay, I'll give you a psychology book. And, I just, we just, talked a little bit, and we disconnected the phone. And what I got to know was, after 2 days, that she committed suicide. So that thing of asking me for a psychological book was a kind of a very hidden message for help. I mean, I of course, did not have this kind of insight back then, but I should have asked her that, why do you want to read a psychology book? What are you looking for in it? And maybe she could, she would have opened up, but that's like, so that's also very important, that, that how we manage such a thing. So that's why I'm saying that we should keep our eyes, ears, our hearts open, and we should never let even a single signal go by. So thank you, everybody, and we can now open for questions. And I guess there are some questions in the chat box itself, so I'm going to open it and see what have people asked. I'll just try to respond to those questions. So thank you. Some of you have sent very wonderful comments. Thank you so much. And yes, I agree. Someone has said that, that parents need to stop being judgmental, and they need to reassure their children. And Arpita has asked that,
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I want to know one thing. If I am staying far in distance, so how I manage one small girl who is in very sorrow, or like that situation, mental sadness. So only phone is the medium, and
Yeah.
maybe video calling, but she is not ready to accept any type of call, or I'm her close relative, but I want to penetrate in her mind. So what is the way out? That is I need to know. How I
Uh,
open?
see, way out is very simple. So whatever we have discussed, you do that in a series of video calls with her, so
Okay.
and then, you can, so once the person says that they are feeling low or they are feeling suicidal, you can make a pact with them that, look, whenever you feel low, whenever this thought crosses your mind, feel free to give me a call and I will take your call. Because see, it's not that whether we are whether we are physically near the person or we are far away from them, but it's more about that whether we can give them a sense of hope, whether we can give them a sense of belonging. That's much more important. That you can do from a distance also. No problem in that at all.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Okay.
And okay, and I would also request, we also have a very senior special educator with us today, Dr. Beena Nangia, and I would ask her to just tell us something about, that how can, because she's also very much immersed in spirituality. So I'll ask her to enlighten us about that, how can spiritual understanding help us at this point. So can you hear me, Beena ma'am? Please unmute yourself and
Yeah.
please. Yeah. Yeah.
Pulkit, I asked you that question and you've thrown it back to me.
No, but I seriously think you are the right person for this. That's why.
Well, see, I, also work with a lot of young adults, and I'm absolutely convinced that if they feel hopeless and helpless, that is the first indication, right? Now, even you have a spiritual understanding and a background, yeah. But in my practice, I feel that this should not be included at the point where they are helpless and hopeless,
Right. Yeah.
Like you rightly said, Pulkit, that all that gyan doesn't work, which
Yeah.
we have, and we think we should be telling these young adults and making sure that something goes into their head and they understand about maybe the divinity and stuff like that. But that's not
Right.
going to help at all. So the interventions that you're talking is the most important. So the spiritual aspect of it, which says that, okay, you have such a wonderful gift, which is life, all that can come a little later once you've
Right.
addressed the immediate concerns, So you rightly said that all this gyan will not help at that time because they are hopeless, helpless, and want to end their life. So after a few sessions where you have found a connect with them and you have listened to them, rightly said that we have to do a lot of listening, and then maybe a little bit of input about how we need to appreciate this gift of life and stuff like that a little bit,
Right.
because they're young adults, right?
Right. Right.
So that could help a lot,
Thank you so much. I think
Yeah.
that's the approach which we all should take.
Yeah, but Pulkit, I have a question which
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to ask you. आजकल screen time बहुत हो रहा है because
Certainly.
online classes are happening with schools, and then after that they have singing class online, karate online. Everything is screen time,
Yeah.
and it's a kind of an addiction that is full blown addiction.
Right. Yeah.
In spite of even managing some things for them to take care of this addiction, it seems like it is really in a bad state, and there are kids who are so glued to all these games, Minecraft and all that, and having a lot of suicidal thoughts because they are all the time on the screen.
Right.
How does then one, because of the online classes and parents are doing all kinds of activities online, how to draw the midline for this kind of a situation?
Right. I think that's a very, very important thing. And what I think here is, that we all can do is, so as parents, as, older adults, that we need to, you know, find some ways of, you know, striking a balance very creatively, because I agree that there are many things that are happening online these days, but then, you know, because most of us are also at homes, we can also think, we can also, you know, go back to our own childhoods and see that, you know, that can we do some offline things also, and how to balance the both. Like, you know, what I did in this lockdown was, you know, because you know, the same problem with my daughter also. So what I did was that I encouraged her, you know, I got a lot of pots and soil and seeds, and I encouraged her to, you know, start gardening, you know. And so what has happened is that now she spends close to 1.5 to 2 hours on the terrace with the plants. You know, she's very happy seeing, you know, them grow. So that's the key, that, you know, I'm sure not every child would be interested in plants and, you know, gardening. So we need to find some ways, you know, and we need to just create this alternative things, you know, that if, you know, that can we need to really think out of the box, you know, go back to our own childhoods and see that when this online thing was not there, how were we making, you know, good use of our time, you know, what were the things that we used to enjoy, and somehow bring them back to, you know, our children in a very modified or a creative manner. That can help, you know, because if we simply rant that no, you know, if we tell the children to stop, you know, don't be online so much, don't be online so much, that never works. You know, we need to, if we are taking away something from them, we need to give something to them which is equally interesting, you know, so that, you know, they also don't feel that sense of loss.
You know, it works with small kids, 6 years and all, for the gardening and stuff. But young
Yeah.
adults who are hooked on to playing games and being hooked to
Right.
the mobile phones, and also their excuse is that because of Corona, we cannot even go out and play. Okay. I mean, they make it an excuse. They can easily go because it's not so bad. They put on a mask or something and go.
Right. Right.
But what has helped me is to actually get them back into the physical activity, you know,
Right.
and get back to the sports that they were doing, say, 6 months ago, and then
Yeah.
slowly wean them off this screen
Right.
time, which
Right.
is,
Yeah.
but it takes time because, you know, like aadat ho gayi hai, because they
Totally.
have the screen and the mobile phones and all. But I think you covered all the points beautifully, and we need to be aware of what is happening, you know. And
Pulkitji, I want to take 1 minute of yours.
Sure, please.
And I think Beenaji will also can join this. We have had very unfortunate incident in our locality. In last 15 days, we have seen 2 young lives gone. Both committed suicide. One is as early as today morning, early morning. Now, I'm really shocked because this person who committed suicide today morning was one of the role models for the society children, and he was around 40 years old, very well educated, very soft spoken, belongs to a very well educated family, and suddenly yesterday evening we met him, and suddenly in the morning he was found hanging in his bedroom. Now my question to all the to Pulkitji, you and Beenaji is, what as a society we can do. I'm part of the RWA association here to help, because I'm sure these 2 suicides would have shaken the entire locality's children. Not only children, but I am very worried about the senior citizens who are living alone in a 500 people society or family society. We have almost 100 houses where we have senior citizens, super senior citizens, 80 plus living alone. And because of pandemic, they as such are in very foul moods, low moods. They are not able to do many things which they
Right.
were
Right.
used to. So can you throw some light on that as a society, what we can do on both these things for children and as well as for senior citizens?
I
Thank you.
think what you can do in these cases is, you know, because you are a residents welfare association, is first to spread this, you know, suicide awareness amongst people, you know, because in our country, because in our country, these, you know, mental health issues are not so much talked about, you know, that we sort of, you know, we can talk a lot about spirituality and those things, you know, but we don't talk about these very basic things, you know. So one thing would be to talk about them in detail with people, to tell them, you know, that they can happen to anybody. it's not a sign of shame or failure, or an illness if they happen, that it happens and people also recover from it. And to give them some basic guidelines on how to cope with these things, and to create a small support group within your RWA. So if like some people can volunteer, and if it can be that anybody who feels low can talk to them or reach out to them, so that can be the first contact point, and then from there you could see, you can refer them to professionals, or see what more is to be done. But like you can also say that that and I think it will be very important that that this support group takes vow of maintaining the confidentiality, that because people may also feel very reluctant that if I call up uncle that I'm going through this, uncle might quickly tell this to 3-4 different people. So I think that that's something that you can do as a residents welfare association.
Yeah, what I need to share is this unfortunate incident that happened. I mean, it's very strange, because knowing this person who had such a beautiful, positive way of living, and he used to motivate the kids around, and his exterior was maybe deceptive, because what he was going within, I don't think anybody even gauged. Because on his exterior, he used to play the flute and play with the kids and motivate kids and guide them as to what they should be doing and reading and all that. So it was quite a shock, because there was nothing external that was, presenting. So I guess the family needs to be very alert and vigilant.
Right. Yeah.
Because
I guess.
Yeah, sorry
to interrupt. I guess this pressure of being perfect in everything tends as makes us feel pressured, and we tend to pretend something, tend to pretend to be something which like we are not, or
no,
whenever
no,
we
no.
have
This
an internal.
this person
Something
was
I
not
don't
so
know,
young as
right?
we are talking. He was in his late 30s, and it's not a youngster or something who needed to, prove a point. His exterior was so beautiful, like everybody looked up to him. So I do think that the family needs to be very alert that that exterior could be a false exterior, of this person.
Ganga, you wanted to ask something? Please put forward.
It was just a point I wanted to make. It all starts with, as a parent, I'm saying, as a parent, how we define success for ourselves and for our children. I think we have given it a very huge dimension. And that's where, when success takes such a big picture, children are automatically looking at something, such a big, large canvas there. They feel there's so much to achieve. I don't think it has to be defined this way. Success, I think as parents, we need to show them what is everyday success. What
Very
are the
good
small
question.
achievements that we are doing?
Yeah.
What are the things that we can improve and do and accept as our children do? Smallest of achievements. You see, that makes all the difference. Why I'm saying this is because, everything otherwise is becoming incentive oriented. आप ये करो, आपको ये मिलेगा. That is one thing that's happening. Secondly, success की परिभाषा, the definition of success has taken such a different turn altogether. I think probably because of or probably because of other factors around us, that is it's overwhelming for the kids. And that's where our role comes in. That these are things that need not have such a image. These are things we need to look at ourselves and show them simple pleasures, simple achievements can really do good and can go really far to make oneself happy. That's all there is to life, I guess.
Right.
I don't think we need to give them certain definitions saying that, beta, ye karoge, usme you will have so much of success and you will achieve so much and tum fashion designer banoge, you will do this. I don't think qualifications have to do anything with this. I don't think we need to give them and, show them benchmarks. Yes, role models we need to be, because we need to show them what simple achievements can be.
Right. Very well
that
said.
actually will make most of the difference.
I'd like to add that in this time of pandemic, the most important thing is the communication. It has increased 1,000 times as required earlier. So unless we communicate with our kids at home and in schools, wherever, the need has increased so much because of this pandemic. There's too much stress with the young adults. So this communication really has to be built up.
That's where I think our role comes in as parents. I think when I was very happy, when in the beginning of the pandemic, in the beginning of the lockdown, when I saw both my children actually bonding so well, because they're on two different time zones when it comes to school, sports, everything. So there were factors which actually benefited the kids, and that's where we need to play a role, saying that yes, this is the time. Keep your phones away. I think devices are really destructive. This is the time we bond, and that makes a difference. And when you probably, I think, I'm not sure, but this is where siblings play a role. When you have a sibling around, it helps. I guess I'm talking from a very, what do you say? I'm a young parent. I'm not a very old parent here. But I would say that this is the time when we actually ingrain the seed, where we tell them that, life is very simple. Don't complicate it. Don't unnecessarily give yourself these particular benchmarks where you want to achieve certain things. And when you don't, I think it's our role to tell them it's totally fine. It's totally okay.
I want to make a point here.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What I want to say is, from a stage of being in joint families, we've come to a society with nuclear families. And from nuclear families, we've come to, stages where you said we are, outsourcing parenting. So it's such a large change, which as a society, we haven't learned to cope up with. There are times when I'm a teacher and I see there are young children going into depression and parents are in total denial. As a teacher, if I try to talk to them, they feel probably I'm thinking too much more than what is there. But we don't want to reach that situation.
Yes.
And there used to be a time when we used to think, bacche to sanjhe hain. They belong to the society. Maybe somewhere we need to come back to that stage where we look at them as our national assets. And it's a combined responsibility that a child in a society is everyone's child. And not
very
just
well said.
Every resident is part of a bigger family. If we can all start.
I want to say something. I think, hello?
Yes.
The comparison of when some parents always compare the children with somebody, that takes them to the depression, because every time they say, oh, wo to bahut acha kar raha, tum itna ye kar rahe ho.
Right.
Even between two own children, they are always comparing. So that is the one point which take them to really depression time.
Right. I would also like to.
Very good, very true.
Maybe Dr. Pulkit will be able to tell me better. How does emotional abuse, in a way, goes a long way to affect a child's mental frame?
Yes,
And
see, I mean,
a parent, how would you say, where do you define the line between emotional mental abuse and let's say emotional settlement of a mental frame of mind of a kid?
So see, anything, the emotional abuse, of course, is very, very damaging for children. And, because it stays.
Why I'm saying that is I would actually want, probably if you can display us an example, because generally emotional abuse is such a large thing. You just don't know where it starts and where it stops. So if you could give us an example of how we slowly move into that arena of emotional.
I'll tell you very simply. So see, there's no objective definition of it, but if anything that causes emotional pain in the child, that is emotional abuse, you know. So we want, so our intention should never be to give child emotional pain. It should, see, because we in fact should make sure that whatever we are trying to achieve, you know, the boundaries that we are trying to make, the, you know, you know, the, you know, all that should be done in a way so that the emotional pain is as minimal as possible, you know. That should be our goal, you know, because emotional abuse can be, of course, reported by the person who has undergone emotional abuse. So we are, as parents, we are no one to judge कि इतना emotional abuse नहीं होगा, इतना होगा. You know, it's more on the child, that how they feel about, you know, what we are saying or what we are doing.
Yeah, because
So
what actually hampers, or rather what gives a very intense effect on the child's mind, we really do not, you know, we cannot gauge most of the time. Kitna deeply he got hurt.
Yeah. So see, you know, it's like that. At all times, we need to be very sensitive. कि अगर हमने कुछ बोला और अगर हम देख रहे हैं कि वो बच्चा बहुत परेशान है या चुप बैठा है या रो रहा है, that is the time to go back to the child, to ask the child how is the child feeling, you know, to maybe even apologize to the child and say that, look, I'm really sorry, you know, मेरा ये intention नहीं था ये बोलने का, है ना? And you know, so to make those kind of amends, you know, that's very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Rotarian Anthony Prabhakar sir wants to put few things. So, sir, can you unmute yourself and talk?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. Good evening, sir. Actually, wonderful talk, sir. Really enjoyed your talk, Dr. Sharma. So what I would like to add is actually, I think one important thing is that every individual should have a very close friend. So this happened to me, actually, one of my very close friends who was actually from Punjab. He was here in Pondicherry. So he used to often have a conflict with his wife. And he was, sometimes he used to beat her actually. So then after that, he will immediately come to my house and he will be perturbed. He'll say, chalo yaar, chai piyenge. So we used to go outside and then I'll ask him what it is. And then he will say that, jagada ho gaya. Then I beat my wife. And the next day I used to go and then, you know, we used to have a talk. I used to have a talk with his wife and all. We used to patch up and everything. So this was going on for almost a year. But then after that, after 1 year in Pondicherry, he left back. He went to Hisar. And, you know, within 6 months, I heard the bad news that he committed suicide. So I think what every individual needs is a friend who you can actually, you know, share your feelings with. So that actually lessens the chances of suicide, I think. Another important thing which I would like to share is it's about myself actually. So what happened is I went through a kind of a depression because I was separated, and the only thing that saved me was actually, one thing is, number one, hobbies. When I went to a psychiatrist, he said that you should have a serious hobby. I took up photography, I took up cooking, and that helped me to, you know, refocus. And another thing is, the most important thing which helped me get over it is actually social service. I started visiting the hospital, you know, and especially the cancer ward. And when I went there to the cancer ward, I realized that our problems are absolutely minuscule. We just make a mountain out of a molehill. There are people with far more greater problems than myself. And, you know, this type of a realization helped me to actually, you know, even I've tried suicide as an option a couple of times. But then when I visited these people and I found out that, you know, that their pains are far greater than mine. So I think these are the ways that one should try to, you know, to focus to really, because I think everybody has got ups and downs in life. It's just that how we refocus our thinking and attitude changes that can help us overcome this suicidal tendencies. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, participants? Ganga?
Yeah, I would like to add on what the previous participant said, that if something is going on for long, which is like you try to be a friend and you hear them out, but if it is going on for long, which is like almost 6 months or that, I think professional help should be sought. You should take professional help. If something like on a friendly base doesn't get resolved, then one should definitely refer those people for professional help.
Absolutely, ma'am. I fully agree with you. But I think, but once what friend is there, at least, that option of suicide gets postponed a bit.
Of course, of course. So, and any hope, see,
Yeah.
when someone is wanting to take away their lives, any glimmer of hope, any anchor point that they can hold on to is very important, But yes, so we give them that anchor point, and then, the next step is to see how they can come out of that state. So you're very, very right. It makes this thing, that the person who wants to take away their lives, if they see there's any glimmer of hope, anyone caring for them, anyone who's there for them, that will change their decision in that moment, of course. Yeah.
Okay, and anybody else, any participants? I think we will, we are coming to the end of the session. Thank you, Dr. Pulkit. It was really, really a very wonderful session. I also thank Veena ma'am, Anil sir, Ganga, and Anthony Prabhakar sir for actively participating and putting their views and guiding us through this session. It was really enjoyable. And I thank all the participants who who joined us through this session. Thank you so much from all of us from Innoville Club of Pondicherry. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for organizing. God bless you.
Okay.